The grand hall of Harmony Prime Station sparkled with lights from 1,000 worlds. General Daeho Kim stood near the observation window watching the stars beyond. He wore his formal military uniform, the one with all the medals he never asked for. 200 years ago, he had helped end the bloodiest war the galaxy had ever seen. Now he was here to celebrate that peace, though the years between then and now had passed in fragments for him, spent mostly in cryogenic sleep. Captain Mingy Park stood beside him, her hand never far from her sidearm. She was young, only 32, but she had the eyes of someone who understood danger. "Sir, you should eat something," she said quietly. "The Galactic Council went to a lot of trouble preparing human food." Daeho smiled slightly. "I'm not hungry, Minji. Too many speeches tonight." He looked around the hall at the gathered representatives from across the galaxy. There were species he recognized, and many he didn't. The galaxy had changed during his long sleep. Peace had made everyone comfortable, perhaps too comfortable. "You don't trust this, do you?" Mingy asked. "I trust peace," Daeho said. "But I've learned that peace requires vigilance. Someone always benefits when it breaks." The main ceremony began with Ambassador Ji-Wan Lee taking the stage. She was elegant and diplomatic, everything a representative of Earth should be. She spoke about cooperation, about the 2 centuries of prosperity that all species had shared. The crowd applauded politely. Then it was Daeho's turn to speak. He walked to the podium, aware of hundreds of eyes watching him. Some species saw him as a hero. Others remembered him as the human general who had been too effective at killing during the war. He didn't blame them for either view. 200 years ago we learned the cost of war, Daeho began. His voice was steady, carrying across the hall. We learned it in ships destroyed, in worlds burned, in lives lost. We made a choice then to put down our weapons and build something better. That choice wasn't easy. It required courage from all of us. He paused, looking out at the assembled dignitaries. But the hardest part isn't ending a war. It's choosing peace every single day after. It's resisting those who would profit from conflict. It's remembering why we stopped fighting in the first place. The crowd seemed to appreciate his words. Some nodded. Others whispered among themselves. Daeho stepped back from the podium and started walking toward his seat. That's when everything went wrong. The first explosion came from the east entrance. Security barriers shattered as armored figures stormed through. They moved with military precision, weapons raised. Their armor bore markings that Daeho recognized immediately, the Vrin Collective. "Get down," Minji shouted, already moving. Her training took over instantly. She pulled Daeho behind a pillar as plasma bolts filled the air. The beautiful celebration turned into chaos in seconds. Dignitaries screamed and ran. Security forces tried to respond, but the attackers had planned well. Daeho counted 8 hostiles, maybe more. They were heading straight for him. This wasn't random violence. This was an assassination. "You need to move," Daeho said, pulling his own sidearm from beneath his coat. He might have been in cryosleep for decades, but his combat instincts remained sharp. "Get me to the service corridor." Mingy led the way, returning fire as they moved. 2 attackers went down, but more kept coming. They were persistent, professional. Daeho felt the old familiar feeling of combat awareness spreading through his body. Everything slowed down. Every sound became important. They reached the service corridor entrance. Safety was just meters away. Then Daeho saw the red dot of a targeting laser on his chest. The shot came from above, from a sniper position no one had been watching. He started to move, but knew he was too slow. Minji was faster. She threw herself in front of him without hesitation. The plasma bolt meant for Daeho struck her square in the chest. The impact threw her backward into his arms. Her armor had absorbed some of the energy, but not enough. Not nearly enough.
"Out now,"
Daeho said, lowering her to the ground. Her eyes were still open, still aware. Blood spread across her uniform. "Mingy, stay with me." "Sorry, sir," she whispered. Her hand found his. "Should have been faster." "You saved my life," Daeho said. His voice cracked. Around them, the firefight continued, but it felt distant now, unimportant. "Help is coming. Just hold on."
"How
but Minji's grip was already weakening. She looked at him with something like sadness. "Keep the peace," she said. Then her eyes closed and her hand went limp. Security forces finally overwhelmed the attackers. The station's defense systems activated, locking down all exits. But it was too late. Mingi was gone. Daeho held her body, feeling something cold and hard settle in his chest. She had been like a daughter to him. She had believed in peace, had dedicated her life to protecting it, and someone had murdered her. The medical teams arrived. They took Minji's body gently, with respect. Daeho stood slowly, covered in her blood. Ambassador Juwan rushed to him, her face pale. "General, are you hurt?" she asked. "No," Daeho said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Flat. Empty. "Captain Park saved me. The attackers who survived were already in custody. Their armor bore Vrin markings clearly. Evidence seemed obvious. But Daeho had fought in enough wars to know that obvious answers were sometimes exactly what someone wanted you to see. 3 weeks passed in a blur. They put Daeho in medical stasis to treat a wound he barely remembered receiving. When he woke, the galaxy had changed again. Earth's government was demanding justice. The Vrin Collective was denying involvement. The Galactic Council was calling for calm and investigation. Daeho sat in his hospital room, staring at Minji's service record on his datapad. She had been an excellent officer. She had believed in the peace he had helped create, and she had died protecting him from someone who wanted that peace destroyed. He made his decision then. If the Galactic Council could deliver justice, he would accept it. But he wouldn't wait forever. He owed Minji that much. The broadcast went out to all of human space. Daeho's face appeared on screens across Earth and her colonies. He looked tired and old, but his eyes burned with something dangerous. "My name is General Daeho Kim," he said. 3 weeks ago, someone tried to assassinate me. Captain Minji Park died stopping that attempt. She believed in peace. She dedicated her life to it, and someone murdered her for it. He paused, letting his words sink in. "The evidence points to the Vrin Collective. I'm giving the Galactic Council 30 days to deliver justice. If they cannot or will not, then Earth will extract justice ourselves. We gave the galaxy 200 years of peace. Don't make us remember how to wage war." The message ended. Across human space, fleet commanders received mobilization orders. Ships that had been museum pieces were brought back to operational status. Soldiers who had only known peace began training for war. The 30-day countdown began, and with it, the fragile peace that had lasted 2 centuries started to crack. Commander, me, Ephora, arrived on Harmony Prime Station 5, days after the assassination attempt. He carried a small bag and a mandate from Earth's Intelligence Division to find the truth. Whatever that truth might be, the station still showed signs of the attack. Repair crews worked around the clock to fix the damaged sections. Security had tripled. Everyone looked nervous. Heian didn't blame them. The galaxy hadn't seen violence like this in 2 centuries. His partner waited for him at the docking bay. Su Mingkong was a xenarchaeologist, which seemed like an odd choice for an investigation. But Heian had read her file. She had spent 20 years studying alien cultures, building relationships across the galaxy. She knew people everywhere. That kind of network was invaluable, Commander Choi Su-min said, extending her hand. She was in her 50s, with gray streaking her black hair. Her eyes were sharp and intelligent. "Thank you for requesting me. I didn't want just military intelligence on this," Heian said as they walked toward the security office. "I wanted someone who understands how the galaxy really works. The informal power structures." "Then you've come to the right person," Su-min said. "I've already started asking questions. The official story doesn't make sense. I spent the first 3 days reviewing evidence. The security footage was clear. 8 attackers in Vrin armor, bearing Vrin weapons, using Vrin tactics. 3 survived the assault and were in custody. Under interrogation, they confessed to being Vrin operatives ordered to kill General Daeho." "It's too clean," Heian said, reviewing the footage again. "Everything points to the Vrin. It's like someone wanted to make absolutely sure we'd blame them." Sumen nodded. She was studying the weapons analysis report. These plasma rifles are Vrin military grade, but they're old models. About 15 years old. Why would Vrin's special forces use outdated weapons? Maybe they wanted deniability, Hien suggested. Old weapons are harder to trace to current military stockpiles. Or maybe someone sold them these weapons specifically for this job, Suman said. She pulled up another file. There's a black market dealer who operates in the outer reaches. Her name is Narration. She's human, and she specializes in alien military hardware. If these weapons came from anywhere outside official channels, she'd know about it. Finding Nara took another week. The outer reaches were exactly what they sounded like, the edge of civilized space, where laws became suggestions, and survival was the only rule that mattered. Nara operated from a modified cargo ship that moved constantly between stations. Hien and Suman finally cornered her at a trading post called Last Hope. Nara was younger than Hien expected, maybe 40, with cybernetic enhancements visible on her left arm. She saw them coming and didn't try to run. Intelligence division, she said, sitting back in her chair at the bar. I wondered when you'd find me. Took longer than I thought. Want to talk about some Vrin weapons, Hyun said, sliding into the seat across from her. Sumin stood nearby, watching the crowd. Old military models. About 15 years old. Someone used them to try to kill General Daeho. Nara's expression didn't change. I deal in a lot of hardware. You'll need to be more specific. 8 plasma rifles. Modified for sustained fire. Sold sometime in the last 6 months, Hien said. He showed her the technical specifications on his data pad. Recognition flickered in Nara's eyes. She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. Yeah, I brokered that deal. But I didn't know what they were for. That's not how it works out here. You don't ask questions? Who bought them? Sumen asked. That's the interesting part, Nara said. She ordered another drink before continuing. The buyer used old Earth military access codes, the kind only high-ranking officials would have. I thought it was legitimate. Maybe some Black Ops operation that needed to stay off the books. Jan felt his blood run cold. Earth's military codes. You're sure? I'm sure, Nara said. I still have the transaction records. Encrypted, but I can show you the authentication markers. Whoever bought those weapons had access to classified Earth military systems. Back on Harmony Prime, Hyun and Sumin worked through the night analyzing Nara's data. The authentication codes were real. Someone inside Earth's military had arranged for the weapons to reach the assassins. But why would humans want to kill their own general? Follow the money, Sumin said. She was searching through financial records, looking for patterns. Wars are expensive. Someone always profits. What she found was disturbing. Over the past 50 years, a network of companies had quietly positioned themselves to benefit from military conflict. They manufactured weapons, built ships, provided security services. During peacetime, their profits were modest. During war, they would explode. The trail led to something called the Phoenix Directorate. It wasn't an official organization, more like a shadow network of wealthy individuals and corporations who shared common interests. They had people in Earth's government, in the military, in major media organizations. They wanted this, Heian said, staring at the web of connections Sumin had mapped out. They wanted General Daeho dead, or they wanted him angry enough to start a war. Either outcome serves their purpose. You need to take this to the Defense Council, Sumin said. They requested an emergency meeting. The Defense Council consisted of 5 senior military officers and 3 civilian oversight members. Hyun and Sumin presented their evidence carefully, showing the connections between the Phoenix Directorate and the assassination attempt. The council members listened in silence. Then Admiral Tai Jin-yu, the most senior officer present, spoke. These are serious accusations, Commander Choi. You're suggesting treason at the highest levels. I'm presenting evidence, Hyun said. The Vrin were manipulated. Someone gave those assassins Earth military codes. Someone wanted this war to happen. Or maybe you're the traitor, said another council member. A woman named Counselor Park. Maybe you're trying to protect the Vrin by creating a conspiracy theory. Hyun felt the room turn against him. He saw it in their faces. Some were hostile. Others looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. The Phoenix Directorate had gotten to them first. "We're placing you both under arrest, Admiral," you said. He looked genuinely regretful. Pending investigation into possible collaboration with foreign powers, security guards moved forward. Hyun's hand went to his sidearm, but Sumin grabbed his wrist. "Don't," she whispered. "Not here. Not now." They were taken to a holding facility, but the Phoenix Directorate had underestimated them. Sumin had sent copies of all their evidence to trusted contacts across the galaxy before the meeting, and Nara, who had decided she didn't like being used, had offered to help if things went wrong. That night, Nara's people broke them out. It was messy and loud, but it worked. By morning, Heian and Sumin were aboard Nara's ship, jumping toward the edge of human space. "So what now?" Nara asked as they left Earth's jurisdiction behind. "You're fugitives. They'll hunt you." "We need to reach General Daeho," Hyun said. "He's the only one we can trust. If we can show him the truth, maybe we can stop this before it's too late." "The generals with the Second Fleet," Sumin said. "They're positioned near the Vrin border. Getting to him will be almost impossible." "It's almost impossible," Nara said with a grin. "That's different from impossible. I've made a career out of going places I'm not supposed to be." Heian looked at the countdown on his datapad. 23 days remained until General Daeho's ultimatum expired. 23 days to prevent a war that powerful people desperately wanted to happen. "Then we'd better hurry," he said. Behind them, the Phoenix Directorate mobilized its resources. Bounties were placed on Hyun and Sumin's heads. Media outlets began running stories about traitors who had sold out to alien interests. The narrative was being controlled, shaped, weaponized. But somewhere out in the darkness of space, 3 people carried the truth, and they were determined to make sure it reached the one person who could stop the coming war, even if he was the same person most likely to start it. General Daeho Kim was counting down to vengeance. Hyun, Sumin, and Nara were racing to give him justice instead. The question was whether they could reach him in time, whether he would listen when they did. The Second Fleet hung in space like a promise of violence. 50 capital ships, 100 smaller vessels, and enough firepower to crack planets. General Daeho Kim stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable, watching the tactical display. The Vrin border was just ahead, marked in red on the screen. Beside him stood Colonel Minho Bay, his oldest friend. They had fought together in the last war, 200 years ago. Minho had aged naturally while Daeho slept in cryo, but they still understood each other perfectly. "The First Fleet reports ready status," Minho said quietly. "Admiral Yu has positioned them on the other side of Vrin space. They're boxed in," Daeho said. His voice was flat, empty. He hadn't felt anything since Minji died. Just cold determination. "Daeho," Minho said, using his friend's first name. "Are you sure about this? Once we cross that border, there's no going back." "Captain Park is dead," Daeho said. "Someone murdered her. The Vrin did it, or they allowed it to happen. Either way, they pay. And if you're wrong?" Minho asked. Daeho finally looked at his friend. "Then I'll spend the rest of my life atoning for it. But I won't let her death mean nothing." Lieutenant Junho Kim worked at a tactical station across the bridge. He was Daeho's nephew, the son of a sister who had died while Daeho slept. Junho had joined the military to follow in his uncle's footsteps, never expecting to actually see combat. Now he watched the countdown timer on his screen. 18 days until the ultimatum expired. The Vrin hadn't been idle. Their own fleets were mobilizing. What had been trade routes and patrol patterns were becoming defensive formations. Other species were choosing sides. Some supported Earth's demand for justice. Others urged restraint. Several were quietly preparing for the economic opportunities war would bring. On Harmony Prime, Ambassador Jiwan worked desperately to find a diplomatic solution. She met with the Galactic Council daily, presenting evidence, calling for investigations, begging for more time. But the Council moved slowly, bound by procedures that had seemed wise during peacetime, but now felt like chains. The Varin government claims they had nothing to do with the attack, Guan told the council. They're requesting a joint investigation. They've had 3 weeks to say that, one of the council members replied. Why should we believe them now? Because the alternative is war, Guan said. She looked around the chamber at representatives from 100 worlds. Do any of you remember what that means? Most of you were born during the peace. You've only read about war in history files. I'm telling you, once it starts, it won't stop easily. But her words fell on deaf ears. The machinery of conflict was already in motion. The first shots came unexpectedly. A human destroyer, the Resolute, encountered a Vrin patrol at the border. Both sides were on edge, fingers near triggers. When the Vrin ships illuminated the Resolute with targeting sensors, the human captain interpreted it as hostile intent. He fired first. The Vrin ships fired back. The brief engagement left the Resolute crippled and one Vrin vessel destroyed. Casualties on both sides. The news spread across the galaxy in minutes. They fired on us, Admiral, you reported to Deho. No. Unprovoked attack on the Resolute. 3 dead, 15 wounded. Deho studied the combat logs. The situation was murky. Both sides could claim self-defense. Both sides would secure the Resolute, send rescue teams, and move the First Fleet forward. Let's see if the Vrin want to escalate further. Sir Junho said from his station. Are we really doing this? Going to war over a border incident? Deho looked at his nephew. The boy was young, untested. He still believed war was something you could control, something you could stop when you wanted. We're doing this because someone murdered Captain Park, and the Vrin won't give us answers. The border incident just means it's starting sooner than planned. The Second Fleet crossed into Vrin space. Admiral Yu's First Fleet advanced from the other direction. The Vrin, faced with invasion, had no choice but to respond. Their fleet commanders issued combat orders. Within hours, 3 more engagements erupted across the border zone. Minach watched it all unfold with growing horror. This is exactly what someone wanted, he said to Deho privately in the ready room. Can't you see? We're being manipulated by who? Deho asked. The Vrin. They're the ones who attacked first. What if it wasn't them? Minho said. What if someone else wanted you angry enough to start a war? Then they succeeded, Deho said. And the Vrin are still responsible for allowing their weapons to be used against us. The argument was interrupted by alarms. A massive Vrin fleet had appeared on sensors. Moving to intercept the Second Fleet, it was the largest deployment of military force the galaxy had seen in 2 centuries. Battle stations, Deho ordered. He returned to the bridge, Minho following reluctantly. The old general took his command chair, and for a moment, he wasn't a tired old man grieving his lost daughter figure. He was the weapon Earth had built 200 years ago. The general who had never lost a fleet engagement. The fleets closed on each other. Targeting solutions were calculated. Weapons charged. Junho watched his uncle's face and saw something terrifying there. The general wanted this fight. Maybe even needed it. Then a priority message came through on a secure channel. It was flagged for General Deho's eyes only. He opened it, expecting another status report. Instead, he found himself looking at Commander Hyun Choi's face. General Kim, Hyun said from the recording. I know I'm wanted for treason. I know you probably won't believe me. But I have evidence that the assassination attempt was orchestrated by humans. The Phoenix Directorate wanted this war. They used the Vrin as patsies. Captain Park died because humans decided peace was less profitable than conflict. Deho's face remained impassive as he watched the message, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Hyun continued, showing evidence, explaining the connections, revealing the conspiracy. I'm coming to you, Hyun said. Me, Sumin Kong, and a smuggler named Narration, we're hiding in a supply convoy that's approaching your fleet right now. Please, sir, look at the evidence before you start a war. Captain Park wouldn't want this. She believed in peace. Honor her memory by at least considering the truth. The message ended. Deho sat frozen. Around him, the bridge crew prepared for battle. The Vrin fleet was minutes away. He had to make a decision, sir. Junho said. The Vrin are hailing us. They're requesting we stand down. Tell them we'll fire if they advance, Daeho said automatically. Then he paused. He looked at the tactical display at the two fleets about to tear each other apart. He thought about Mingi, about her last words. Keep the peace, Colonel Daeho said. Find the supply convoy in our formation. Scan it for unauthorized passengers. Bring anyone you find directly to me. And do it quietly. Minho's eyes widened slightly. He understood. Yes, sir. The Vrin fleet held position, waiting for Earth's response. The second fleet held position, waiting for orders. In that moment of terrible suspense, everything balanced on a knife's edge. Millions of lives waiting to see which way the blade would fall. Hyun, Sumina, and Nara crouched in the cargo hold of a supply ship, barely breathing as security teams swept through. They had made it this far. Now everything depended on whether General Daeho would listen, or whether his grief had made him deaf to reason. Contact, the security team reported. 3 unauthorized passengers in Cargo Bay 7. Bring them to the General, Minho ordered. Carefully. They're not to be harmed. Minutes later, Hyun stood before General Daeho in the ready room. Sumin and Nara flanked him. The general looked older than in his broadcasts, tired, but his eyes were still sharp and dangerous. You have one chance, Daeho said. Tell me why I shouldn't have you executed for treason and then proceed with destroying the Vrin fleet out there. Because Captain Park died to save you, sir? And if you start this war, you'll be giving her killers exactly what they want. Then he began explaining, showing evidence, revealing the truth. And General Daeho Kim, the greatest military commander Earth had ever produced, sat and listened while 2 fleets waited outside to see. They would write the galaxy's future in fire and blood. General Daeho Kim studied the evidence for 3 hours while 2 fleets held position, waiting. Haeon and Sumin stood in the ready room, exhausted from their journey. Nara leaned against the wall, watching the general with interest. Colonel Minho waited silently. Finally, Daeho looked up from the datapad. His face was unreadable. This is real, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, sir, Yon said. The Phoenix Directorate orchestrated the attack. They wanted you dead, or angry. Either way, they got their war. Daeho set down the datapad carefully. His hands were steady, but Han could see the rage building behind his eyes. Humans killed Minji. Our own people murdered her to start a war for profit. Yes, sir, Haeon said quietly. The general stood and walked to the window. Outside, the stars were cold and distant. I almost gave them what they wanted. I almost destroyed the Vrin fleet out there. Started a war that would have killed millions. You didn't, sir, Minho said. You listened. You waited, because a captain I branded a traitor risked everything to tell me the truth, Daeho said. He turned to face Hyun. Thank you, Commander. You've saved more lives today than you'll ever know. What do we do now? Sumin asked. Daeho's expression hardened. We show the Phoenix Directorate what happens when they betray Earth. We end this, but not the way they planned. Over the next 6 hours, Daeho coordinated with Admiral Yu and a small group of officers he knew were clean. The plan was dangerous. They would maintain the appearance of continuing toward war while secretly preparing to strike at the Phoenix Directorate itself. A coup, essentially, but one aimed at traitors rather than legitimate government. The Directorate has military forces loyal to them, Admiral Yu said over the secure channel. They've positioned around Earth. If we move openly, they'll resist. Then we don't move openly, Daeho said. We need the Vrin. Everyone in the room stared at him, sir. Minho said. The Vrin were manipulated just like us, Daeho explained. Their weapons were stolen or sold, used to attack us. They have as much reason to want the truth exposed as we do. I'm going to meet with their leadership. That's insane, Nara said. They'll kill you. Maybe, Daeho said. Or maybe they'll listen. Commander Choi, get me a secure channel to the Vrin fleet. I want to speak with whoever is in command. It took hours to arrange. The Vrin were suspicious, convinced it was a trap. But finally, Minister Thalvin agreed to a meeting. Neutral ground, minimal security, 1 aid each. A small merchant vessel in the space between the fleets would serve as the meeting point. I'm going with you, Minho said. No, Deho replied. If this goes wrong, someone needs to command the fleet. That's you. Lieutenant Junho will accompany me. Junho looked shocked. Uncle, I'm just a tactical officer. I've never done diplomatic work. You're my family, Deho said. And you're not corrupted by the Phoenix Directorate. That makes you the perfect choice. The shuttle ride to the merchant vessel was tense. Junho sat across from his uncle, trying to process everything that had happened. Do you think they'll listen? He asked. I think Minister Thalvin is smart enough to recognize when he's been used, Deho said. And I think he's angry about it. We have that in common. The merchant vessel was cramped and old, designed for cargo rather than diplomacy. The Vryn shuttle docked on the opposite side. Deho and Gunho waited in the small meeting room, space barely large enough for 4 people. Minister Thalvin entered from the other airlock. He was tall for his species, with scales that shifted color based on emotion. Right now, they showed deep blue caution mixed with curiosity. His aide was younger, carrying a datapad and looking nervous. General Kim Thalvin said in perfect English, This is unexpected, Minister Deho replied. Thank you for coming. They sat at the small table, the 4 of them in that tiny room, while outside 2 fleets waited to see if they should kill each other. Deho explained everything the Phoenix Directorate, the stolen weapons, the human conspiracy. He showed Thalvin the evidence Hune had gathered. The minister's scales shifted through several colors as he processed the information. You're saying your own people orchestrated this attack? Used our weapons to frame us? Yes, Deho said. Just as someone stole or bought those weapons from Vryn sources, we were both manipulated. Thalvin was quiet for a long moment. My government has been conducting its own investigation, he said finally. We identified the weapons supplier. He claims a human buying agent approached him 6 months ago. The transaction was legitimate, approved through what appeared to be proper channels. The Phoenix Directorate has people everywhere, Deho said. In your government, probably? Certainly in mine. They've been preparing this for years, so what do you propose? Thalvin asked. His scales were showing red now anger. Our fleets are at the brink of war. My people want justice just as much as yours. Then we give them justice, Deho said. Not against each other. Against the ones who actually did this, but we need to work together. The Directorate is powerful. They have resources, military forces, political protection. If we fight each other, they win. If we fight them together, we have a chance. Thalvin studied Deho carefully. You're asking me to trust you. After your fleet invaded our space, after you threatened to destroy us, I'm asking you to trust the evidence, Deho said, and to recognize that we have a common enemy, one that sees both our peoples as pieces on a game board. The minister looked at his aide, then back at Deho. What do you have in mind? They talked for hours, planning. The key was exposing the Phoenix Directorate in a way that couldn't be denied or covered up. A broadcast to the entire galaxy, showing all the evidence, making the conspiracy public. But the Directorate would fight to prevent that. They needed to strike fast and hard. Back on the Indomitable, Deho briefed his command staff. The Vryn are with us. Minister Thalvin is coordinating with his fleet. We're going to broadcast the truth from Harmony Prime Station. Its neutral ground has galaxy-wide communication arrays. But the Directorate will try to stop us. They have forces at Harmony Prime, Hayan said. He had been digging deeper into the Directorate's network. Security contractors on their payroll. Maybe 200 armed personnel. We'll send a mixed force, Deho said. Human and Vryn soldiers working together. Show the galaxy that we're united against the real enemy. Colonel Bay will lead the mission. Minho nodded. What about Earth? The Directorate's leadership is there. Admiral Yu is moving the first fleet into position, Deho said. When we make the broadcast, he'll arrest the key figures. But timing is everything. If we move too soon, they'll run. Too late, and they'll stop the broadcast. Sir Junho said hesitantly. What if people don't believe us? What if they think it's propaganda? Then we present evidence they can verify themselves, Sumin said. She had been working with Nara to compile everything into an unbreakable chain of proof. Financial records, communication logs, witness testimony. Everything traceable and checkable. The truth is on our side. The operation launched at midnight, ship time. Mixed teams of human and Vryn soldiers boarded assault shuttles. Minho commanded from the lead ship. They jumped to Harmony Prime together, a sight that would have been impossible just days ago. The Phoenix Directorate's security forces were prepared. They had fortified the broadcast center, knowing it was the key target. When Minho's forces arrived, they met fierce resistance. Plasma fire lit up the station's corridors. Lieutenant Junho fought alongside a Vryn, soldier named Keth. They covered each other, moving through the chaos with the desperate coordination of people who had no choice but to trust. Junho took a hit to his shoulder but kept moving. Keth dragged him behind cover. "You good?" Keth asked in broken English. "Good enough," Gunho gasped. "Let's keep moving." On Earth, Admiral Yu's ships surrounded key facilities. Arrest warrants were executed simultaneously. Some Directorate members surrendered. Others fought back, triggering brief but intense firefights. The news networks, most owned or influenced by the Directorate, tried to spin it as a military coup. At Harmony Prime, Minho's forces finally reached the broadcast center. The cost had been high: 14 dead, 30 wounded, both human and Vryn, but they held the facility. The communication arrays were intact. General Kim Minho reported, "The center is secure. We're ready for broadcast." In his ready room on the Indomitable, Daeho stood beside Minister Thalvin. They had written their statement together, choosing each word carefully. This moment would define how the galaxy remembered them. As warmongers who came to their senses, or as leaders who chose truth over vengeance. "Ready?" Thalvin asked. "No," Daeho admitted, "but we do it anyway." They walked together to face the cameras, a human general and a Vryn minister. About to tell the galaxy a truth that would shake everything people thought they knew about peace and war. The broadcast went out across every inhabited system in the galaxy. On Earth, on Vryn Prime, on 1,000 colony worlds and space stations, people stopped what they were doing to watch. General Daeho Kim stood beside Minister Thalvin in the Harmony Prime broadcast center. Behind them, human and Vryn soldiers stood together, a visible symbol of what they were announcing. "People of the galaxy," Daeho began. His voice was steady, controlled. "3 weeks ago, someone tried to kill me. Captain Minji Park, a brave officer who believed in peace, died stopping that attempt. The evidence pointed to the Vryn Collective. I threatened war. I brought our fleets to the brink of destruction." He paused, letting that sink in. But the truth is more complicated and more disturbing. The assassination was orchestrated by humans, by a group called the Phoenix Directorate, who saw profit in war and peace as an obstacle to their wealth. Thalvin spoke next, his translator rendering his words in dozens of languages simultaneously. "The Vryn Collective was manipulated. Our weapons were stolen or purchased through false credentials, then used to frame us. We prepared for war, believing Earth had betrayed the peace. Both our peoples were played against each other by those who profit from conflict. For the next hour, they presented evidence. Financial records showing the Directorate's investments in war industries. Communications proving their coordination of the attack. Testimony from Nara about the weapons deal. Everything laid out clearly, verifiably, undeniably. We stand here together," Daeho said, "because we chose to seek truth over vengeance. We chose to question the obvious answer, and we found that our real enemy wasn't each other, but those who would use us as pawns in their games." The broadcast ended with a joint statement. An immediate ceasefire between Earth and Vryn forces. A call for the Galactic Council to investigate the Phoenix Directorate, and a promise that both leaders would work to ensure such manipulation could never happen again. The galaxy's reaction was immediate and chaotic. On Earth, protests erupted as people realized their own leaders had betrayed them. The Directorate's remaining members tried to flee, but Admiral Yu's forces had sealed off escape routes. Most were captured within days. A few disappeared. gone to ground somewhere in the galaxy's dark corners. The Galactic Council convened an emergency tribunal. For the first time in 2 centuries, humans stood trial for crimes against galactic peace. The proceedings were complicated, heated, and often contentious. Some council members argued the Directorate's crimes were internal Earth matters. Others saw them as a threat to the entire galactic order. Ambassador Jiwan led Earth's delegation, arguing for justice, but also for understanding of how the conspiracy had operated. These people betrayed not just Earth, but the very concept of peace, she told the council. They must face consequences. But we must also learn from this. We cannot allow our systems to be so vulnerable to corruption. General Deho testified on the 3rd day. He described receiving news of Captain Park's death, the rage that consumed him, the choices he made that almost led to war. It was painful testimony, admitting how close he had come to becoming exactly what the Phoenix Directorate wanted. I was a weapon, he said quietly to the assembled council. 200 years ago, Earth built me to win wars. I did my job well. But Captain Park taught me that being a weapon isn't enough. You have to know who you're fighting for and why. I almost forgot that. I almost let my grief blind me to the truth. Trials lasted 3 months. In the end, 17 members of the Phoenix Directorate were convicted of conspiracy to incite war, multiple murders, and crimes against the galactic peace. Their sentences varied. But the message was clear: the galaxy would not tolerate those who profited from manipulating people into conflict. But punishment wasn't enough. The underlying problems remained. The old peace treaty had been based on trust and good faith. That was no longer sufficient. The galaxy needed new safeguards. Ambassador Jiwan worked with representatives from dozens of species to draft a new treaty. It included provisions for rapid investigation of suspicious incidents, shared intelligence networks to detect manipulation, economic penalties for war profiteering, and most importantly, commitment to question obvious answers and seek truth before reacting with force. The process was long and often frustrating. Every species had different priorities, different concerns. But slowly, painfully, the new framework came together. It would never be perfect. Nothing involving that many different peoples could be. But it was stronger than what came before. While diplomats worked on the new treaty, the military dealt with the aftermath of the brief war. The 30 Days War, as it came to be called, had killed over 3,000 people in the various skirmishes and battles. Not a large number by historical standards, but each one was a life cut short, a family devastated. Colonel Minho led the effort to honor the dead. Human and Vryn soldiers who had died fighting each other were recognized together. Many had been following orders, believing they were protecting their peoples. They deserved to be remembered. Lieutenant Junho spent 2 months in recovery from his shoulder wound. When he returned to duty, he found his perspective had changed. He had fought alongside Vryn soldiers at Harmony Prime, had watched them bleed and die for the same cause he believed in. The galaxy felt different now, bigger, more complicated. I'm leaving the military, he told his uncle during one of Deho's visits to the medical station. I want to work in diplomacy. Help make sure this never happens again. Deho smiled slightly. It was the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him since Minji's death. She would have liked that. Captain Park always said peace was harder work than war. What about you? Junho asked. Are you staying in command? Deho was quiet for a long moment. I submitted my resignation. They refused it. Said I was needed to help implement the new security protocols. He looked tired, old. Don't know if I'm the right person for that. I almost started a war. But you didn't, Junho said. You stopped it. That's what matters. Commander Hyan and Sumen were officially cleared of all charges. Nara received a full pardon for her past activities and a lucrative contract to help develop the new shared intelligence network. Her expertise in moving through the galaxy's shadows made her invaluable for understanding how to prevent future manipulation. Never thought I'd be working for the government, Nara said during a planning meeting. She grinned at Hyan. You better pay well. You pay adequately, Hyan said dryly. He had been promoted to Director of Counterintelligence, a position he never wanted but couldn't refuse. Consider it an investment in your legitimate business future. Minister Thalvin returned to Varin Prime, a changed leader. He had gone to war reluctantly and discovered his people had been manipulated. The experience hardened him, but also made him more determined to preserve peace. He worked closely with Deho on the new security protocols, building a friendship neither had expected. You know, Thalvin said during one of their meetings, "Before all this, I saw you as the enemy, the human general who killed so many Vrin 200 years ago, and now?" Deho asked, "Now I see you as someone who understands the cost of war and chooses peace anyway." That's harder than it sounds. 1 year after the assassination attempt, a memorial was dedicated on Harmony Prime. It listed all who died during the 30 Days War. Captain Benji Park's name was first on the list. Carved in stone that would last centuries, the dedication ceremony brought together representatives from across the galaxy. General Deho stood at the memorial with Minister Thalvin, Admiral Yu, Ambassador Jiwan, and others who had lived through those terrible weeks. The crowd included humans and Vrin standing together. Former enemies united by shared experience. Deho placed his hand on Minji's name. He didn't speak, couldn't trust his voice, but he made her a promise in his heart. He would spend whatever time he had left making sure her death meant something, making sure the peace she died protecting would be stronger than before. After the ceremony, people dispersed slowly. Junho approached his uncle, now wearing a diplomat's uniform rather than a soldier's. "The new treaty is almost finalized," he said. "They're calling it the Park Protocol, named after Captain Park." Deho nodded. She would have found that ironic. She always said the best memorial was living well, not naming things after the dead. "Then we'll do both," Junho said, as the sun set over Harmony Prime's artificial horizon. Deho stood with a small group of friends and colleagues. Minho, Heian, Sumin, Nara, Thalvin. People who had come together in crisis and discovered they could build something better than what came before. "You know what's strange?" Sumin said. "The peace we had before was comfortable, easy. We took it for granted. And this peace?" Nara asked. "This peace is work," Sumin said. "Constant vigilance, constant effort. But maybe that makes it stronger. Peace isn't something that just happens. It's a choice we make every day." Deho looked at the memorial one last time before they left. Captain Minji Park had made her choice in a fraction of a second, throwing herself in front of a plasma bolt. She chose peace, even though it cost her everything. The galaxy was learning to make that same choice, or slowly, but just as surely. Not because peace was easy or comfortable, but because the alternative was unthinkable. The Phoenix Directorate had reminded everyone what happened when you took peace for granted, when you let it become something passive rather than active. "The hard part is maintaining this," Deho said quietly. 10 years from now? 20 years from now? When people forget why we built these safeguards? When peace becomes comfortable again? And we remind them, Thalvin said. We tell them about the 30 Days War, about Captain Park, about how close we came to destroying everything. And we make sure, Hune added, that the systems we're building can't be corrupted the way the old ones were. It won't be perfect. Nothing is. But it will be better. They stood together as darkness fell. A small group of people who had stopped a war and were now trying to build a peace that could endure. It wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges ahead, people who would test the new systems. New threats they couldn't yet imagine. But for now, standing by the memorial to those who had died, they allowed themselves a moment of hope. The galaxy had come through fire and emerged changed. Not unscathed, but wiser. Not comfortable, but vigilant. And somewhere in the stars. In the eternal silence of space, the spirit of Captain Minji Park rested knowing her sacrifice had not been in vain. The peace she had died protecting was stronger, a harder one, built not on comfortable assumptions, but on the constant choice to turn away from war. That choice would have to be made again tomorrow, and the day after, and every day that followed. But tonight, at least, the galaxy had chosen well.